that the changes that are necessary here are evident in the fact that the panel didn't take into consideration enough the domestic violence history of this particular prisoner, and the fact that there were reports by the victim of that person being knocking on her door, being around her apartment building, etc. And so one thing that we've decided to do is to make sure that we enhance the domestic violence training that all PRB members get, including all the ones that are there now, and of course any new ones that are proposed, to make sure that this never happens again.
Yeah, we need to make sure it never happens again. I wish we would have made sure it didn't happen in the first place. That's Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about Cressetti Brand, who murdered this 11-year-old boy less than 24 hours after being let out of prison. We've got Illinois State Senator Jason Plummer in here with the 55th district. That's your new district, right?
Yes.
Everybody's changed.
I know.
I got to keep up, Jason. I want to give you the opportunity to set the table so that people understand, especially from your position, because you were watching the Prison Review Board and have been
Right.
for some time. What took place with this 11-year-old boy and this criminal Brand in mid-March?
Well, let me respond to what the governor just said, and then let me break it down a little bit, because, what I hear him saying is the members of the Prisoner Review Board, or the panel that oversaw this particular case, didn't take everything into consideration. They didn't do a good job, and now they've kind of been forced, or at least one of them has been forced to resign.
So the problem isn't the system, it was the people.
Well, so he wants to say they didn't do this. Okay, well, let's take it down a little bit further. Who put them in that position? You did, J.B. Pritzker. And the one that resigned in particular is someone that I've literally been talking about for 3 years, being unqualified, having cast dangerous votes, not performing well in committee. Frankly, she shouldn't have been there. She was there because J.B. Pritzker kept her there, and now this has happened. It's the evidence was there. If we would have had qualified people, in that position, I don't believe this, supposed perpetrator would have been let out.
So I think that the story in and of itself is tragic, and I think it's important to take it back, kind of like you were saying, to understand how these systems are set up to work.
Sure.
Because maybe we weren't paying enough attention, but I didn't see stories like this before J.B. Pritzker was the governor. Is this directly related to the Safety Act? Is this a core policy of J.B. Pritzker? Is it the Democrats in Springfield? What's the process for someone like Cressetti Brand to be? You're supposed to be serving 16 years for home invasion and aggravated assault. Looks like he went back to his old ways there, which now includes murder. Initially paroled in October 2023, put back in prison in February of this year. What's the process here?
So I'm the Republican spokesman on a committee called the Executive Appointments Committee, and all of the governor's appointees, agency heads, boards, commissions, all throughout the state flow through that committee, or at least they're supposed to. So we're talking about hundreds of people a year. Specifically when it comes to the Prisoner Review Board, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is part of philosophy, and the governor is very far left when it comes to criminal justice, when it comes to releasing people. He is very antagonistic towards our law enforcement. It's made the streets of Illinois dangerous. Crime is out of control. The Prisoner Review Board is made up of 15 people that the governor appoints. Within 60 days of being appointed, they're supposed to appear before my committee so that we can provide a check and balance and make sure that they're qualified. And the Senate, votes to confirm or not to confirm these people. The governor's appointees over the last 3 or 4 years have been so problematic that he has avoided them to the best of his ability. He's avoided having them appear before the Senate. So the 60-day clock, right? It would get to day 58, day 59. He would withdraw their appointment. And then the next week he would reappoint them and claim that starts the clock all over again. So we literally have had people avoiding the Senate and serve. And by the way, as soon as they're appointed, they start casting votes. So these people have
you're appointed, and then you have 60 days to get approved by the Senate.
Correct. But before you're even approved by the Senate, you start serving.
That's insane.
So, so we've had these people who are supposed to be approved by the Senate within 60 days that have been serving, that served for months and in some instances years without being approved by the Senate. And we tried to raise this issue numerous times, and the governor just hasn't listened. One last thing I'll lead you with is what really raised the flag on this was in 2020, we saw some really notorious murders released. And we started digging into the numbers. And if you look at Governor Blagojevich, Governor Quinn, Governor Rauner, Republicans and Democrats, the PRB was pretty consistent. It wasn't until J.B. Pritzker came into office that the spike occurred in these violent criminals being released, and that's because he has politicized the PRB.
Are there people on the committee that didn't want Crissetti Brand to be released?
Well, we're still waiting for, you mean on the prisoner review board?
Yes.
So we're waiting to see the details of this case. One thing that they've done is they've changed the process so that instead of all 15 people voting, the chairman can appoint 3-person panels, and just those panels can cast the votes.
Does the chairman pick the panel?
Yes, that's my understanding. And so what we've had here, our understanding is this one particular person who resigned, she did the hearing with Crissetti Brand. Then she wrote up her proposal and I guess provided that to the other members of the 3-person panel, which then my understanding is, again, this isn't fully clear yet, but my understanding is then all 3 of them voted to release this gentleman, who, like you said, had been in prison. I think he was sentenced to 16 years, had served less than half of that, had been paroled last fall, violated his parole, was put back in, and J.B. Pritzker's prisoner review board said, hey, you know what? Let's let him out again.
We're speaking with Illinois State Senator Jason Plummer. It's just unbelievable. Like, now I live in Southern Illinois, it's different than Chicago. I work in St. Louis every day. I know how it goes here. There's a lot of similarities in how crime and victims and criminals are treated in these two things. But why would you, how do you feel safe in J.B. Pritzker's Illinois if not just, we can see with the fruit of his labor here, you can see the outcome of his policies, but also getting into the weeds and digging a little bit deeper here, the really active sidestepping of actual representation of people who are elected so that the government is as close to the people as it possibly can. If there is a nook or a cranny that he can slip through to circumvent the system to get the outcome he wants, how can he possibly say that this isn't the outcome he wanted?
100%. And, I've been working on this issue for 4 years, so I could talk with you for 10 hours about this. I'm a little hesitant to get into all the weeds because at some point you worry about credibility. But when I tell your listeners really some of the stuff that's occurred, to get into J.B. Pritzker's mind, to understand how far left he is, this 15-person prisoner review board, he appointed to the prisoner review board, which, by the way, they get paid nearly $100,000. But he appointed to the prisoner review board a convicted double murderer. He appointed to the prisoner review board the godmother to Barack Obama's daughters, right? He's appointed to this prisoner review board people that under no rational circumstance can you imagine being qualified or being acceptable to serve on this board. The convicted double murderer, one of the first people he voted in favor of releasing was a convicted cop killer that he served in prison with. Okay, you cannot make this stuff up. And you try to explain this to, our constituents. You try to talk to the media in Illinois about this, and it's kind of hard to get it through folks' mind, like how far left this governor is when it comes to criminal justice.
I try to dig deep and come up with questions that would make it make sense. Like, I don't agree with it, but this is how, let's say I had a different worldview or a different set of circumstances that I was brought up in, that I would go, well, I see where they're coming from, but they're very wrong about it. I can't make that happen in my brain.
I kind of say that all the time. Sometimes you think, well, I think this tax should be 4%, and the Democrats think it should be 8%, and we're in the super minority. So, well, if we can get it to 5 or 6, that's kind of a win.
You can get.
That's kind of the win, right? And so you do try to understand where people are coming from when it comes to this governor. From a public policy standpoint, there's no defense. So if it's not a public policy thing, what is it? And it's clear, and I get beat up, when I say this on TV in Chicago, but I've said it on TV in Chicago. I'll say it on the radio in St. Louis. The governor doesn't care about Illinois. Okay. He cares about becoming president of the United States. That is his goal. He is using the people of Illinois as a stepping stone. And so everything he does, Prisoner Review Board, the budget, tax policy, you name it, everything he does is done through a political lens. And that political lens isn't about what's in the best interest of the people of Illinois in 10 or 20 years. It's how do I get to Washington, D.C.? And, you mark my words, 10 years from now, you'll be living in Illinois, I'll be living in Illinois, other people will be living in Illinois, dealing with the consequences of this governor's wild policies. He's either going to be in D.C. or more likely he's going to be on a beach in Ron DeSantis' Florida, living under better public policy than what he's putting on the people of Illinois. Because this governor, his long-term focus is not the state of Illinois.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is his aspirations are not the best for Illinois. It's the best for J.B. Pritzker. But J.B. Pritzker thinks that you being on the Annie Fry show talking about this is really you playing politics.
Well, the more that people politicize the position, the less likely it is that someone would want to serve in it. And as you know, there have been people in the General Assembly, typically the opposite party, who have politicized this. So it makes it more difficult. But we have not, this has been a very short period of time. I think we're talking about 5 work days so far since the resignations, the two. And so obviously we're contemplating that we need to make nominations to those positions, but we don't have any decisions yet.
Senator Plummer, J.B. Pritzker, governor of the state of Illinois, says shame on you for trying to make this a political collateral.
Yeah. Well, serving on the Executive Appointments Committee, right? Like I said before, hundreds of people come through there a year. I think any senator that's watched our work on the Prisoner Review Board will say we've been very even-handed. We've not been political. I believe that the governor has the right to appoint the people that he wants to a large degree to all of these various positions. Our job is to make sure they're qualified and to provide a check and balance. I've passed through the committee numerous people I don't agree with politically, but I believe that they were qualified to do job XYZ. The only time that we've made a beef on the Prisoner Review Board is when they brought before us people like the godmother to Barack Obama's daughters, who was completely disinterested in the board, couldn't answer any questions, wouldn't respond to FOIAs. And literally, I think she voted to release every murderer that I saw appear before her, right? The person that was involved in releasing Chrisetti Brand, right? She finally appeared before committee. It was a disastrous appearance. She cast numerous troublesome votes, couldn't answer some basic questions, didn't have a background in law enforcement or, the judiciary or legal, shouldn't have been on the board, was unqualified. I talked about it for 3 years. So we've sent letters to the governor. My inbox is full of people saying, hey, I have this background. I'm qualified. I'd be happy to do it. We have gone out of our way not to make this a political issue because I don't think public safety is a political issue. Our issue is a governor who's forcing his far left philosophy onto a board that has a significant impact on the lives of Illinoisans. We're trying not to make this political, but when we've brought this up for 3 years, the governor's called us carnival barkers. He said we're talking about Facebook fakery. He just calls people's names. He makes up stories about politics. I don't think Jaden Perkins' death is Facebook fakery. I don't think because we're raising legitimate issues that we're carnival barkers. I care about the communities I represent, and J.B. Pritzker makes them more dangerous.
Have they made the changes they need to make with this board to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
Oh, absolutely not. You've heard the governor. He wants to talk about domestic violence training for members of the PRB. I would say, hey, if you're appointing qualified people, they already know about domestic violence. The Senate I've had legislation languishing in the Senate for 2.5 years trying to address some of these issues about the way he's manipulated the system, people serving without being confirmed, and so forth. Senate Republicans have rolled out legislation to raise the bar in terms of qualifications. We've rolled out, significant legislation that I think would make the process better. It would make it less political. And this governor, we'll see if he works with us on it. He has every opportunity to do so.
No governor term limits in the state of Illinois, correct?
Right, correct.
Do you think he runs in 2 years?
I think he does. I think we all know he has his eye on the prize, and I think I was on an interview a couple weeks ago about a separate matter, and they asked what I thought the legislation or the legislature would look like this spring, considering it's election year. They said generally things get a little moderated because people are worried. I said typically yes, but I don't think we're going to moderate in Illinois because 2024 and 2026 isn't what matters in this governor's eyes, right? He's shooting for 2028, and he really, really, really is going to do everything he can to position himself in a primary. And the people of Illinois are going to have to deal with that unless we are able to defeat him in a couple of years.
Last question. The DNC is bringing their convention to Chicago. They're coming to the state of Illinois. That's how comfortable they are in the blue state of Illinois. I mean, you see the same stories I do about a lot of black individuals in Chicago screaming at meetings, at community meetings that they're having, like, you're not listening to us, you're funding the illegal immigrants who are coming here, and you're taking our taxpayer dollars away from the needs and resources we have. Do you think that when the Democrat Party assessed Chicago as a Democrat stronghold when they scheduled the convention to be there, has anything shifted between then and when this convention will happen in the summer?
Well, I know a lot of Democrats are concerned about what the optics could end up being on this. I think you're going to see identification demanded. You're going to see walls built. You're going to see everything that they say is bad. You're going to see built in Chicago to protect this convention from the mayhem that their public policy has caused in the city of Chicago. I can't imagine a better background for the Democrat National Committee than Chicago, where kids, some of the most vulnerable children in the state, aren't getting the education they deserve, even though we're spending buku dollars to educate them. Crime is out of control. The migrant crisis, which is bad in a lot of places, but it's particularly bad in Illinois because J.B. Pritzker's invited them to Illinois with open arms. It's going to be a real disaster, I'm afraid. And that's unfortunate because you and I know Illinois is a great state that has a lot to offer, but public policy has really put us in a bad spot.
It has. It is still worth fighting for, though. I'm grateful, State Senator Jason Plummer, that you are still fighting for it. People ask me all the time why I'm there, and I know that you have family there and I have family there. Our kids have our grandparents there, and it's worth fighting to give the state, the land of Lincoln, its due and try to get it back to some sense of normalcy. And I know you're doing that in Springfield all the time.
I appreciate that. If we're not fighting in Illinois, they're going to be focused on places like Jefferson City. And, we got to hold the line in Illinois and show folks why we cannot allow this philosophy to expand.
Amen. Illinois State Senator Jason Plummer, keep fighting. Keep us updated on your efforts here with the Prison Review Board. I'm glad that your voice is being heard across the country, but especially here on the Andy Fry Show.